A flight captain punches a passenger off the plane, thinking she's just another regular traveler, unaware that the woman she's humiliated is the daughter of the airline's owner. What happens next will change everything. Subscribe now to find out how this shocking story unfolds and comment where you're watching from. A flight captain, Emily Harris, had just finished her final check for the flight to New York, completely unaware that this trip would be different from all the others. As she walked down the aisle, her eyes scanned the passengers, giving them the usual brief, professional nod. She didn't care who they were, she had a job to do. But what she didn't know was that the woman she had just walked past was someone she should have paid attention to. Tasha Thompson sat by the window, lost in thought. Her hair was neatly tied back, and her business suit was sharp, but nothing about her screamed wealth or fame. She wasn't the kind of person who liked attention. To the casual observer, she was just another passenger, quietly waiting for the flight to take off. But there was something different about her, something hidden beneath the surface. Tasha wasn't just any ordinary woman. She was the daughter of one of the wealthiest and most powerful men in the country, Thomas Thompson, the owner of the airline they were flying with. Tasha had spent her entire life trying to escape the shadows of her father's name. She didn't want to be seen as the rich girl or spoiled heir. She wanted to make her own way in the world, to be respected for who she was, not who her father was. So, when she traveled, she kept a low profile, blending in with the crowd. But that wasn't about to stop one flight captain from making an assumption that would cost her everything. As Emily passed by, she couldn't help but notice Tasha's calm demeanor. To Emily, the woman looked like just another ordinary passenger, a businesswoman who was used to flying. Emily had seen plenty of passengers like her, and she thought nothing more of it. But when she reached Tasha's row, something about her caught Emily's attention. Maybe it was the fact that Tasha was a black woman in a well-tailored suit, or the fact that she was sitting so quietly by herself. Either way, Emily made a judgment. "Excuse me, ma'am," Emily said with a forced smile, her tone dripping with an unnecessary level of condescension. "You need to make sure your seatbelt is fastened. You should have done that when the seatbelt sign came on." Tasha, who had been staring out of the window, blinked in surprise. She had been lost in her own thoughts, not even realizing the seatbelt sign had been turned on. She slowly looked up, meeting Emily's eyes, but said nothing. She was already used to people underestimating her based on her appearance. It wasn't the first time someone had treated her like she didn't belong. But Emily wasn't done. She didn't like the idea of someone ignoring her instructions. "Do you need me to explain how seatbelts work?" Emily's voice was sharp now, her patience wearing thin. "We're about to take off. Follow the rules like everyone else." The rest of the passengers were already settling in, some glancing up to see what the commotion was about, but no one said anything. The judgment was clear. Tasha was just another regular passenger, someone who was beneath Emily's attention. But what Emily didn't realize was that Tasha's calm demeanor wasn't a sign of weakness. It was a sign of control. Tasha took a deep breath, staying quiet. She fastened her seatbelt as instructed, but she wasn't going to let the flight captain's words slide. The nerve, the disrespect. She had seen this kind of thing before, and it always irritated her, but this time was different. This time, she wasn't going to just let it go. Emily continued to move down the aisle, not giving Tasha another thought. She had already written her off as just another regular passenger. But Tasha's mind was racing. She pulled out her phone and quickly typed a message to her father, Thomas Thompson, the owner of the airline. "Dad, you won't believe what just happened. One of the flight attendants is treating me like I don't belong here. She was rude and dismissive, like I'm just another person who doesn't matter." She hit send. The message was brief, but to Thomas, it would be everything. The message wasn't just about the disrespect Tasha had felt. It was a signal that things were about to change. Meanwhile, Emily went about her duties, oblivious to the storm that was about to hit. She handed out snacks, smiled at the other passengers, and continued with the routine of the flight. But somewhere in the back of her mind, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. It was just a small interaction, but the feeling lingered. She couldn't have known that her actions would lead to a moment she'd never forget. As the plane ascended into the sky, Tasha sat back in her seat, trying to relax. She was angry, but not for the reason Emily might have assumed. It wasn't the rude words that stung, it was the judgment, the assumption that Tasha was just another person to be talked down to. She wasn't going to let that slide. The plane soared higher and Tasha's phone buzzed. It was her father. She opened the message from Thomas, and his words were direct and clear. "Don't worry, sweetheart, I'll take care of this. No one treats you like that. I'll make sure she knows who you are." Tasha smiled, a sense of calm settling over her. Her father might be busy, but when it came to protecting his family, he was always quick to act, and Tasha knew that he didn't take disrespect lightly. She looked back down the aisle, catching a glimpse of Emily, who was still moving through the cabin. Emily had no idea who she had just crossed paths with, but she would soon find out. As the flight continued, Tasha leaned back in her seat, letting the turbulence of the moment pass. She wasn't the type to make a scene, but she knew that this time she had to make her voice heard. This wasn't just about one rude flight captain. It was about showing that no one, no matter their background or appearance, should be treated with disrespect. The flight continued, and Emily walked past Tasha once more, this time with no words, no judgment. But the tension was thick in the air. Emily didn't know it yet, but she was about to find out exactly who she had disrespected. As the plane cruised toward its destination, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. She'd seen Tasha again while making her rounds, and something in the woman's calm, steady gaze unsettled her. There was no defiance in her eyes, no anger, just a quiet confidence that made Emily uneasy. She tried to push the thought aside, focusing on her job, but it lingered in her mind. After a few more minutes, the flight began its descent into New York. The passengers started to gather their things, preparing to disembark, and Emily made her way toward the front of the plane. She had no idea what was about to happen. As the plane landed smoothly, passengers began to stand, grabbing their bags from the overhead compartments. Emily stood at the front of the plane, ready to do her job and wish everyone a pleasant day. She was used to this routine, but today, things would be different. Tasha stood up from her seat and began walking toward the exit, just as she had done on countless flights before. But this time, there was something different in her step. It wasn't the typical quiet, understated demeanor she usually had. There was purpose in the way she walked, a sense of control. As she reached the front of the plane, Emily noticed her immediately. At first, Emily didn't recognize Tasha. She was just another passenger leaving the plane, and she started to smile politely, ready to continue her usual "have a nice day" spiel. But as Tasha got closer, Emily's smile faded. Something in the way Tasha was carrying herself, confident, almost like she knew something Emily didn't, made her stop. She had a feeling this wasn't just another passenger saying goodbye. Before Emily could speak, Tasha's voice cut through the air, sharp but steady. "I don't think you understand why I'm standing here," she said. Emily blinked, not quite sure what to make of the statement. Tasha was still composed, but there was a quiet power in her words that made Emily uneasy. She had no idea who Tasha was, but something told her she was about to find out. "I'm not here to argue," Tasha continued, her voice steady but firm. "I just want you to understand something. The way you treated me today, it wasn't just rude, it was unnecessary. I don't need you to apologize, but I do need you to know that I am not someone you can talk down to." Emily was frozen. She had never been spoken to like this by a passenger before. "I'm the daughter of Thomas Thompson, the owner of this airline, and I expect more from the people who work here," Tasha said, her voice carrying the weight of her father's name. Emily's heart dropped. The moment she had dismissed Tasha, thinking she was just another average traveler, was now staring her in the face. The realization hit her like a punch to the gut. She hadn't just been rude to a regular passenger. She had disrespected someone with more power than she could have ever imagined. Tasha stood there for a moment, letting the words sink in. She wasn't angry, she was simply making a point. It wasn't about revenge, it was about respect. "You may not care who I am, but you should care how you treat people," Tasha said. "It doesn't matter whether someone is sitting in a designer seat or an economy seat. We all deserve the same level of respect. And that's something you should remember next time you decide to make assumptions about someone." Tasha turned to walk away, her steps measured and sure. Emily didn't know what to say. She stood there, her mind racing, trying to process what had just happened. As Tasha reached the door, she paused for just a second and turned back to Emily. "By the way," she added, her voice colder now, "I'll be making sure you understand the importance of respect in this workplace, and I won't let anyone forget it." With that, she walked off the plane, leaving Emily standing there, stunned. Emily stood frozen for a long moment, staring at the spot where Tasha had just been. Her heart was still pounding, and she could feel the weight of her mistake settling in. She hadn't just messed up a simple customer interaction. She had crossed a line she wasn't going to be able to walk back from. She felt a tap on her shoulder and turned to find the co-pilot and another crew member standing behind her. The look on their faces was enough to tell her that they knew exactly what had just happened. "You all right, Emily?" the co-pilot asked, his voice low. Emily tried to speak, but the words caught in her throat. She had been a flight captain for years. Nothing had ever thrown her off like this. She had treated passengers like this before, had judged them, dismissed them based on their appearance or behavior. She had never thought it would come back to haunt her. As Emily began to regain some composure, her phone buzzed. She pulled it out, still dazed from the encounter, and saw a new message from her manager. "Emily, there's been a complaint about your behavior on the flight today. We've already received a report from someone important. You'll be hearing from corporate soon." Her blood ran cold. She knew exactly who had filed that complaint, and she knew exactly what was coming. The realization hit her hard. She had just made an enemy of someone with the power to destroy her career. And there was no going back. Later that day, Emily sat in her office, waiting. Her phone was silent now. She couldn't stop replaying the encounter with Tasha in her head. She had dismissed her, treated her like she was nothing. But now, the truth had come crashing down. She had crossed the wrong person, and Emily wasn't prepared for the storm that was about to hit.